the sage or the jnani. Can you speak about the ignorant man and the sage? The ignorant man does not experience anything other than the body and is blissfully ignorant of the I principle. The sage does not experience anything other than the I principle and knows the body to be only an illusion. He who has deeply known consciousness, though it is ridiculous to say so, has established himself in consciousness. He is a jivan mukta, free within while living in the world. Is there anything higher still? Yes, not in content, but in the naturalness of control. Though born as a child in ignorance, it is the highest goal to become a child in knowledge. All jivan muktas do not rise to that state, and it is not necessary for their own purpose either. Whenever anything is said about a sage or a jnani, it is the personal that is described, but with the accent always on the impersonal. The sage is impersonal, and as such can never act, think, or feel as a person. As he really transcends the limits of love, he cannot limit it to an individual, society, or country. His love can never be mutilated in that manner. So what then are the rules for a sage? The sage does not follow any rules. I do not mean rules like those of the road or society, but rules of spirituality. Rules are really meant to take one to the sage or truth. Therefore, rules humbly follow the sage and do not dare to overtake him, because the sage does not need their services, and they are dissolved or become meaningless in his presence. The sage has both worldly and spiritual activities. To him, both are recreations, each in relation to the other, on equal footing. What work can a jnani undertake? A jnani can take to any vocation in life he chooses, in accordance with his former habits and samskaras, because he knows that the activities of life have no bearing upon his real nature. He does not act for individual pleasure or happiness, but purely out of a spontaneous urge coming from deep below. If you say that you do a thing, the truth is that you do not do it. It really means that you stand beyond both doing and not doing. First, we go beyond the three states to discover the I principle. And then, looking from that standpoint, we see that the I principle expresses itself in all the three states and even beyond them. Thus, the Jivan Mukta expresses himself in all the activities of the body, senses, and mind. But to the ordinary man, a Jivan Mukta appears only as another ordinary man, exactly as the Absolute appears to the layman as objects perceived by the senses. Well, why does a jnani sometimes try to help others in distress? The jnani knows well that the source of all their distress is the fear of death. And he knows that death is a misnomer. So he tries to help them to continue to live in the illusion for a time, only long enough to make them understand that they can never die. How to make one understand the sage? It is so easy. Just direct your mind to your deep sleep. The sage is there in deep sleep. The sage is exactly as you are in your deep sleep. If any question is put about the sage, just ask the questioner the same question regarding his role in the deep sleep state. Even when you are engaged in all your daily activities, does the man in you ever get disturbed? No. In a similar way, the sage is undisturbed by any of his apparent activities. When correctly examined, of course, you will see there are no activities either. Diversity can never stand scrutiny. Then why bother about activities? There is only one activity. And if activity is only one, it cannot remain as activity. It is the reality itself. How does the sage talk? The sage always talks through your instruments. But there is something of the sage even in those statements. Take note of that part with advantage and benefit yourself. The statements by themselves leave no mark behind. Well, it seems the sage sometimes comes down to a lower level in answering questions. Is it then a compromise? No, never. Though the level of the answer might appear lower when looked at from lower down, it is not so. Because the sage is all along emphasizing that reality which the questioner has never noted. So the answer, unknowingly, takes the listener to the goal, and therefore the result is not a compromise at all. So then, is a sage's life beneficial to all? By life, we mean the activities of life. They fall into three categories: physical, mental, and conscious or atmic. Mental activities are accepted to be much more strong and effective than the physical. But the atmic, though extremely rare, is the one pertaining to the sage. They are self-effulgent activities of light and love, and their effect is imperceptible to the naked eye, unlike those of the preceding ones in the mental and physical realms. For they come from the sage spontaneously, unasked. It is such activities alone that keep the moral balance of the world, even in the midst of all chaos. How is the sage beneficial to society? Is the sage beneficial to himself? Yes, he is. And if so, he is beneficial to the world, which is in essence himself. Is he beneficial to humanity? Yes, he is beneficial to man as man, and proves to man that he is one with animals, vegetables, and minerals. What higher form can love take than feeling one with another? For this is the highest service, and this the sage does in full. You say one must love his neighbor as himself. When the sage does it in full, you find fault with him. When one loves his neighbor as himself, he cannot stand separate to do service to him. So to do service from the standpoint of a sage is impossible. You can never become one with another, with the body or with the mind. Beyond mind, there is no duality of any kind. One has only to rise to that level, and all problems vanish. The sage stands there in peace. Why does a yoni weep? Why should he not weep? Why should he laugh? What prohibits him from weeping alone? He does everything else, acting and perceiving, thinking and feeling, apparently like an ordinary man. But there is a world of difference between the activities of the two. For the ignorant man acts as a slave to his passions, while the yoni is the master, the passions being his slaves. Therefore, the yoni can weep or not weep as he chooses. But there is happiness even in weeping. The mere thought of the departed gives happiness, but that thought cannot be ordinarily separated from the allied aspects. So both together are helplessly accepted by the ordinary man. He begins to think of the agreeable aspects of the departed, and gradually gets lost in the less happy aspects and weeps profusely. But the yoni knows perfectly well that his real nature as peace, or objectless happiness, is the background of all emotions, and welcomes grief and weeps like anybody else. But not for a moment does he lose sight of the background of peace. The ego never sees the light, though he always uses light. The sage sees that light alone in every perception. He is great who sees the light alone in all perceptions. The eye is the first part of every perception. This is the light which manifests the object. But this part is usually ignored. You can speak of anything only as dead matter. I alone possess consciousness. Even God is to be taken only as dead matter. No human being has ever reached the ultimate. Though sages may seem to live, the human being is transformed into the ultimate itself just before reaching it.